So let's start again, Brian. Okay, state your name, your title, and your company.
Okay, I'm Brian Engle, Director of Business Development for 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗏.
Thanks, Brian. And what are you currently working on?
Currently, we're working on a lot of battery controls sensors within our application space. So a lot of battery safety related sensors, everything from temperature sensors across the gamut of applications to cell venting detection, sensors that detect water ingress into packs and systems, a variety of other different sensors that are related to the application spaces that batteries are used in, everything from micromobility to large BESS systems.
Yeah, what's really exciting in that space that you're seeing?
Oh, just the myriad of different applications. Obviously, energy density continues to grow in this space. I'm an old combustion guy from my early engineering days. It's quite an experience to be involved in what is for many industries the next big shift in energy storage and motive power and a variety of other different applications, and especially new applications that are basically coming to the fore with this high energy dense electron storage systems that we're seeing. And it's pretty exciting. It's almost like Moore's Law in electrochemistry right now. We started out with a couple of different electrochemistries that seem to meet a number of application needs, and now we're starting to see partitioning of sodium ion, solid state, a variety of different metal salt cathodes and different anodes and different packaging for cells. And so what we're really kind of experiencing now is something that is akin to early days of being a car guy. Early days of automotive, there was steam, there was wood, there was a variety of different fuels, petrol, diesel being among them, but there were other things that were experimented with. And it took a while for the industry to kind of coalesce on a couple of different systems that hung around for about 100 years. The companies and the countries that were actively engaged in this space basically have been involved for 100 years in these application spaces. So it's pretty exciting to see all the innovation, all the creative solutions. There's room for mature companies and startups in this space, which is what's really interesting, because we're seeing legacy companies trying to figure out how to make this massive pivot. They've been heavily invested in technologies that are very, very mature, and they've got a good solid business model for them. And this upends a lot of business models and a lot of approaches and a lot of the ways that people think about how energy is being used and how it's deployed.
Do you have any thoughts on where people's blind spots are in the industry?
We have a lot of them. I'd say we're on a very steep learning curve right now. I like to say every day's a school day in this industry right now. And that's one of probably the most exciting things I find is that I'm always learning. Every day there's something new, whether it's a policy issue, whether it's a material discussion, whether it's a new and innovative solution that somebody has come up with, or a challenge. And in many cases, safety becomes one of the topics of discussion. But as far as blind spots go, it depends on whether you're in the business of batteries, and if you're in the technology of batteries, or if you're in the application of batteries. Obviously, things like overcapacity is certainly something that is, I think, coming to the fore as an industry challenge, because it's driving the prices for the devices themselves down substantially, and it's making investment very challenging in this space. But at the same time, many of the companies who are contributing to overcapacity, they're not making money. It's kind of a race to the bottom. And in a way, that's good for the consumer, because they very quickly reach a commodity status where the market is massive and global and far-reaching and basically within the grasp of many consumers for some of these new applications. But I think the business of batteries is a big challenge, because with a lot of the policy, especially recently, some of the policy decisions, availability of material, the challenges of the investment, billions of dollars of investment required. And as we've seen from some of the recent issues faced by some of these companies, really some of the biggest challenges include things like just being able to see a path to profitability. Startup costs are huge. They are substantially greater than a lot of other technologies people can get involved in. And when you look at something like, a software company where your assets and your capital invest can be fairly light, it's certainly capital heavy, and the return on investment is slow. So that is a challenge for a lot of companies. And this is a time of great transition. And I'll go back to my automotive example. 100 years ago, there were 400 companies trying to make a go of it in the automotive industry just between Toledo and Detroit. Within a decade, 90% of those companies were gone. And in many cases, companies that we know today were formed from what was left of those companies in the early days when a lot of people were trying different solutions. So General Motors, Chrysler, a number of other companies that were actually formed from failed companies where someone purchased the assets and they got them to critical mass and put a good business case together and built companies that lasted a century. But I expect to see a lot of the same turmoil in the near term. So that's, I think, probably one of the big blind spots a lot of companies see. They get excited about the possibilities, but they either overscale or underinvest. And then when their investors come knocking and say, hey, where's my return on investment? And they're like, that might be a few years out yet. It becomes a big challenge for a business. And then when you have to start cutting staff and cutting your strategy back, it really becomes an issue of viability. So we're going to see a lot of that. But through a lot of that pain and turmoil, I expect to see some amazing companies for the next 100 years.
Yeah, that's such an interesting history, and it's so cool to see these parallels between the past and what's going on now and what we can learn from the past and all of that. And yeah, it's been so cool, I think, for me the past year, just going to all these conferences, and I feel like I see you at every single one of them, right? I'm curious, like, when you go to these conferences and you're meeting people, like, what's something that stands out to you about this industry?
A lot of the pre-competitive knowledge sharing, to me, is probably the most amazing part of this industry. So I've always been involved in a lot of standards organizations and activities that relate to safety, that relate to regulatory compliance, and so been part of those dialogue amongst companies, which is basically trying to have a level, safe playing field for all to operate within. And one of the things that I see in this industry that is really pretty amazing is that there is an openness. Everybody has challenges, and everybody is trying to solve many problems at once. And so there's a much greater willingness than I've seen in a lot of the legacy work that I've done for companies to engage in very open dialogue on what their real issues are. And especially when it comes to things like safety and how to basically address some of the issues that we've seen in the field. It's really, I think, quite probably the best word I can use for it is it's a sorry, we're gonna have to cut that because I was looking for a word and my brain couldn't find it.
It's okay. It's okay.
So yes, so one of the things that I see companies are very actively engaged in is a lot of this pre-competitive discussion, especially on things like safety and challenges that cut across the industry. And that's great. And there's also dialogue between industry and governments, which is also helpful because you can't make policy decisions in a vacuum. You can't establish regulatory framework in a vacuum. As we can see from some of the failed policies and failed regulations, unless you have very active engagement, that's a big challenge. So to me, what's been really eye-opening lately has been the level of engagement and the level of openness many companies have on some of their biggest challenges, especially when it comes to safety. And to me, that's significant because it means that if we look at Bob Gallien's 5 golden rules of electrochemistry, number 1 always remains safety. And the fact that it is a very open dialogue around the issues and trying to resolve some of the biggest problems in front of the industry, to me is refreshing because it means that the people who use the products are more important than profits and more important than the bottom line and what a ledger sheet might look like, which is great.
Yeah, and how long have you been working in the industry now?
Well, off and on, I've been involved with batteries for almost 35 years. So
Wow.
I was engaged in my very early days at Ford Motor Company in basically it was a college research project, part of SAE, which was Sun Race in my pre-Ford days, and then as I joined Ford, I had the opportunity, a wonderful situation that was afforded me by, let's just say, some very enlightened leadership at the Ford Motor Company that allowed me to be involved in a project that was run by the Department of Energy, SAE, and the automakers that really became an ongoing program called the Advanced Vehicle Technology Competitions. And that particular program started out with, I think, very simple goals, which was to have people at the university level, at the trade school level, involved with the industry, to have them, develop hands-on experience. So it's not just about the classroom. So anyway, so in my early days at Ford, I had the opportunity to be involved in one of the very nascent AVTC, or Advanced Vehicle Technology competitions. And this was called the Hybrid Electric Vehicle Challenge. And in this particular program, as a young engineer fresh out of college, we actually had the opportunity to help run the program. It was a 3-year project, and we actually got to choose the project, the university research that was performed. And we had 32 universities involved, and it was a bridging technology. So it started out in 1990, and the challenge was, hey, we had SAE's DOE run a program called Sun Race, and that was kind of neat. But, solar cars with bicycle wheels really weren't going to be running on highways anytime soon. So Ford leadership challenged some young engineers to come up with a clever but practical project for universities to be involved with. And that really became kind of the first of a lot of the electrification series that became the Advanced Vehicle Technology competitions. It's still run today by the Department of Energy. And over 30,000 engineers have been through that in its lifetime. And it's a pretty amazing project. But been involved in work like that, and then drifted into a fair regular job of combustions, emissions, safety, fuel, regulatory compliance in my career. Became part of a Tier 1, got to be involved with a number of OEMs globally over time, so it really got me exposure to the global transportation industry, and really got to see deeper into the infrastructure of just how broad that and deep that scope of industry is, and how many millions of people are involved in it.
Wow, that's so cool that you were involved in that early like education program and just kind of saw it through and still continue in the field today, solving these challenges. Like,
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are you most proud of across your career, maybe personally or professionally?
Oh gosh, that's tough. I am very proud of that program, of being a part of that. It was a team effort, but it certainly felt really good to see that program grow. And some of the universities that have been involved in that project over time were some of the first to do research on some of the technologies and battery chemistries that we use today. Lithium-ion chemistry was first deployed with some of those projects, and so I'm pretty proud of that. But I'm also probably sinfully proud of a lot of the work that I see the SAE committees doing now, which is really setting the stage for the next 100 years. So I was granted a wonderful opportunity through a number of really good mentors in the business to become part of the SAE committee framework. So I started out as chair of the SAE First Responders Task Force, dealing with issues in the field and establishing protocol around how to deal with electric vehicles that are damaged in collision and incidents, and being engaged directly with first responders, and keeping people safe in that environment and learning from incidents in the field. It was quite a steep learning curve there. It was a very good experience for me. Continues to be so as the technology evolves. But also through that, I also eventually became vice chair and then chair of the Battery Standards Steering Committee at SAE. And that's approximately 800 engineers and scientists globally working on 32 committees that are basically setting the stage for everything from labeling to thermal interface materials to battery thermal management and controls, sensors, and most recently battery traceability, so tracing a lot of the raw materials and creating a framework for the battery manufacturers and OEMs to know where that material is coming from that's going into those battery systems. So, my involvement with that, I like to say I'm fairly short, so I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and it's great to work with leaders in the field there, and certainly every new development in that environment is something to be proud of. So I get an opportunity every week to learn something new, and every week one of the committees is doing something that is really, I think, far-reaching in that it's people that cut across borders. We have committee meetings that have people who are, in Asia, Europe, North America, South America, and sometimes the meeting times get a little awkward, but it's amazing to see this technical dialogue going on, and thankfully the common language being English, but with a number of people who have their different perspectives and their different experiences, bringing that all to the table with a common vision of what to do with these SAE standards.
Yeah, so I'm hearing a lot of you're just involved in so many of these collaborations that are setting the foundation for the future of the battery industry, also the automotive industry, and other things to see. That's really incredible.
Well, it's certainly a wonderful opportunity, and there's space for everyone right now. I think when we look at the market space, this is a technology that is not only displacing a number of 100-year-old technologies for, basically moving energy, the combustion world, but it's also enabling so many new spaces. And so it's pretty exciting. So when I, look at, new engineers that are just entering the space, new scientists, and even new technicians, people who are basically engaged in either, building the equipment that makes the product or maintaining, the application spaces. It's an exciting place to be because the tools that are available today to learn mean that people learn so much more and so much faster than they did when I was a young engineer. So it is a really exciting place to be, and there's even room for some of us that have, let's just say, a few gray hairs and let's say a lot of experience, but are still challenged to keep up with some of the younger folks in the industry in terms of the most recent evolutions in technology.
Yeah, I feel like, when it comes to learning things about the battery industry, there's so many rabbit holes you could go down.
Yes.
There's not enough time to learn everything, yet somehow over the years, the dots start connecting. Has that been your experience?
Yes, yes. There's a lot of areas that I know I don't know anything about. Yesterday I had a very interesting and educational conversation with some experts in cybersecurity. So when we talk about what battery systems are doing now, especially with vehicle-to-grid bidirectional charging, diagnostics, second life, what we're finding is that these devices, when they're no longer useful in an automobile, they may have another decade or so of useful application in another space because the use cycle is slightly different and the cells are still good. We're seeing extraordinary life in this particular product, so it's pretty exciting to see where it can be used. And now we're just starting to tap into these areas where I have very little experience, and I'm learning every day about things like, well, how do I keep a system like that safe? How do I prevent the equivalent in a battery pack of somebody rolling back the odometer when they pull a battery pack out of an application and say, hey, it's a better pack than you think it is. It's a really good pack, and I want to charge more for it. Or somebody who says, I think I can get more mileage out of my pack, or I think I can get more power out of my pack if I just tweak this one thing. And so having that experience in the past at the vehicle level of people modifying my engine control strategies, I can say that anti-tampering and protection and compartmentalization of data is a new field for me in this particular application space. So I really have to rely on experts. I can't know it all. Certainly it's wonderful to know that so many experts are willing to share so much knowledge and information. Now, whether that's in a NAATBatt committee where we're sharing experiences and knowledge, or we bring in a special session for our members to talk about a specific technology or a specific application space, like I said, it's always like every day is a school day.
Every day is indeed a school day in this industry. You summed it up so well. And, as I'm hearing your journey, what would you say are some of the guiding values that you have?
Probably chief among them is safety. I've always been involved in safety, even in my early controls days. So really it's about making sure that people who use a particular application are not injured or harmed by it, and that both the short-term safety concerns and the long-term health concerns are considered when you're designing and developing a system. And that's one of the things that I really feel resonates between myself and my own personal vision of the world and organizations like NAATBatt, where we're looking at recycling and we're looking at how do we build batteries with the smallest environmental impact that we can. There's never a zero environmental impact aside from doing nothing at all that you can do in industry, but basically doing the work with that in mind, but still understanding that businesses can only be so altruistic. They have to be profitable to survive. They can't do the task if they can't generate revenue and they can't pay their people. So it's that balance of safety, growth, and certainly in terms of the guiding principles for my career. I really do think that Bob Gallion has summed it up into five, basically his five golden rules for electrification. Safety comes first, performance, environmental, it's got to be efficient. All of these things are great to say, that's applicable not just to batteries, but to basically any product that you're developing and any work that you're doing. So, to me, it's minimize harm. That's the first thing. And then do useful work, be relevant, solve problems for people. Those are things that are very important, and they cut across that NAATBatt membership. And that's one of the things that I find is amazing about working with that almost 400 companies, is every one of those people has a very similar view of the world in terms of, while their background is different and their experience and knowledge base in their industry or their particular corporation and maybe their research work is a different area, they still have a very similar guiding value, which is be relevant, solve a problem, and do it in a way that does as minimal harm to the environment and people as possible. And it's great to see that and to see the sharing that goes on amongst the membership.
Yeah, I agree. I think so many people stumble into the battery industry from like a different field, but they all, like, maybe not all, but a lot of people have this core value of, they want to see something beyond fossil fuels. They want to see the technology advance and us be able to harness the power of renewables in our grid. And so, do you see that too?
Yeah, and I see, obviously, as administrations come and go, the emphasis on certain policies changes. As we've seen recently here in the U.S., the emphasis on environmental carbon footprint has been de-emphasized in favor of basically, all bets on the table for generating electricity and for storing and moving electricity and moving power. So, when I look at the shifts in administration policy, whether it's Europe, North America, or Asia, there is still I think a recognition that the fossil fuel era, very much like the Bronze Age, is nearing its terminus. It'll still have application spaces, but they'll be far less global, very focused in areas where there simply isn't a better, more efficient solution. But what we're finding is, with electrification, not only do we have cars that have ranges that exceed their combustion engine counterparts, but we have, cost points for these application spaces that are coming down. And, first our objective was to achieve parity with a 100-year-old technology and a lot of experience in cost cutting. And now we're seeing that the technology has not only the advantage of being a lower cost point to the consumer, specifically in automotive, but in other spaces as well, but it's also got a lot more durability and a lot more performance. A lot of people early days were excited about electric vehicles because, hey, they didn't emit exhaust fumes. And being a combustion guy, I can tell you, there's only so much we can do with that exotic chemistry set on the back end of an engine. When it gets to the point where it literally is, like in the case of SCR for diesel after treatment, it is a chemistry set. It's basically doing chemistry in real time under extreme conditions. And where we're trying to manage that, to manage the environmental footprint of that technology at the level that we're doing it, we know we're kind of reaching the practical end of that technology. And at the same time, the energy density in electrification is climbing. We used to be excited about 200 watt-hours per kilogram, 250 watt-hours per kilogram, really got people excited about the potential in the future. And now we see cells that have 500 watt-hours per kilogram, a doubling of energy density. And that, to me, is significant because I don't see that there is a short-term end to that we will be eking out, I would say, putting more electrons in smaller spaces and making more efficient use of them is really going to continue on. And so, in terms of what's going to happen over the next, several decades, this is going to be a very active space for research and development, for new companies to move to the fore, for old companies to make the pivot and adapt. So spaces like NAATBatt are really good places to get to know that network of people and have a much better understanding for how this industry is evolving and basically trying not to fall behind.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, we're talking about the role of NAATBatt and these organizations in supporting the industry and also how it takes like such a diverse set of skill sets to make things happen in this field. If someone were outside of NAATBatt looking in, wondering, how would this benefit me or how do I even get involved, where would you tell them to start?
Well, we have a number of committees that are actively engaged in a variety of different spaces, and obviously even in this industry, you have to break down the work task by task. You can't do everything all at once. And so joining a committee is an easy way to gain exposure and experience. And it doesn't cost anything. You don't have to be a NAATBatt member to join a committee. And what we typically find is that people who join committees really start to see high value in engaging more committees, more activities, starting to attend the workshops, attending the annual meeting, and then they realize that 400-ish company network is actually much broader than that. It's a network of thousands of people who know the industry very well and who have been with the industry in some cases for a while and in some cases, a very short time. But all of them have something useful to contribute, and that network helps solve a lot of those problems. And some of the issues may be issues that if you just graduated with your chemistry degree and you say electrochemistry is for me, and you start in a company that's just getting its feet on the ground and doing pilot work, and you're really excited about a potential new electrochemistry or a potential new application, and then you realize, hey, you know what I learned in school isn't enough, and there's a committee that talks to government regulatory policy, or there's a committee that talks to military batteries, or there's a committee that talks to safety, there's a committee that talks to some of the legal challenges that the industry's faced with. So nobody can know everything, so the committees do a great job of kind of getting you that exposure. And then as you get more involved, you may find that it's worth the very low cost for membership that people typically see is, it's cheaper than going to a single conference to become a NAATBatt member on an annual basis. And so I think what we find is that our members have a lot of staying power. When they get into NAATBatt, they stay involved in NAATBatt. And I can say personally from my own career growth, I have developed a lot of mentors in NAATBatt who have done a great job of teaching me the ropes, so to speak, of the industry, and I've got a lot more to learn. And I'm sure I'm going to learn from people who are much younger than me as I go forward. I need to recognize I need to be fast and agile, as well as learn from my peers and those who have come before me. I think that one of the things that we see in that NAATBatt organization is the international aspect of NAATBatt. Whether it's working with other battery organizations and associations, whether it's KBIA or whether it's the European Battery Alliance, the Global Battery Alliance, to talk about some of these issues and work on them as an industry, that's a really powerful voice. And as a nonprofit, it's a neutral ground to have a really good discussion on. So we're not pushing a specific agenda for a specific chemistry or a specific group of companies. We try and address, the industry as a whole, and the resources that are available within that network are certainly, at least my company's involvement, worth far more than we pay in our annual membership, and certainly have provided us a lot of insight, a lot of knowledge that we have used to shape our strategy and the way we work as an organization to adapt to this growing field.
Yeah, I feel like when I went to the NAATBatt annual conference at first, it was like all the people who I look up to and learn from on LinkedIn are all in the same room, and it's like, oh, here's everyone. This is where they are.
Yes, it is that. And I think I will say it is a lot of fun to I think experience a little of that hero worship when you go, because there's not many venues where you can see and talk to somebody like Bob Gallion, the first employee that CATL hired as their chief technology officer, and all of his wealth of experience he has in the industry, setting up all the battery manufacturing facilities and working in the various electrochemical technologies he's worked in his career. Or Dr. Stan Whittingham, the Nobel laureate for lithium-ion chemistry. And to meet these people and to talk to them and realize that they are still learning and they are still very much engaged in the industry. And it's really exciting to find that we can contribute to a body of knowledge from our little slice of that pie, and even they are still learning, and that's exciting. So I think, to your point, to find all of those people who are in the industry in one room is really amazing. And then the network and the friendships that grow outside of that are fantastic. It's great to be able to send an email or pick up the phone and talk to somebody who's another NAATBatt member and say, hey, I got a question, and to get those phone calls yourself and to know that people recognize the skill sets that an individual has and how that contributes to the whole of the industry.
Yeah, and I talk to people about, how are you learning these days in the industry? And it's really like, oh, I call up my buddies, I call up my colleagues and ask them the questions, right? It's having that connection to knowledge, current state of knowledge that is the, state of art of what's going on in the industry today, because that's been changing quite quickly in recent times.
Yes, it has, and it will continue to change and evolve, and that's what's exciting about this is that, NAATBatt is basically an organization that looks at electrochemical storage at a broad level. It is not specific to lithium-ion only or a specific group of companies, and it addresses everything from mineral extraction, through that whole process of building something using something, and then even at the far end, what do you do when that thing is now at its end of life, and how do you recover the materials and reuse them for the next generation of products? And the fact that the entire infrastructure is engaged and involved and sees a place in NAATBatt is fantastic. What I find is really interesting about NAATBatt too is NAATBatt does grow and adapt, and as we've learned from 𝗕،𝗫𝗄𝗏𝗏 Foundation, many NAATBatt members are looking to some of the work that's going on in there and saying, hey, this is really good. This is helpful and useful. Some of the work that's going on within that organization that's a benefit to our membership. And so seeing those conversations that occur, it's at from high level to low level. It's from everybody attending similar events and having a good conversation as an industry, both as individual members of Volta and corporate members of NAATBatt, talking to each other. But to see people like Jim Greenberger and 𝗕 sitting down together, and I had the wonderful opportunity in Stuttgart several weeks ago of having the two of them sit and talk about how the two entities can work together, and how the outcome can be positive for both. And to me, that's what's great about these organizations, is they grow and evolve and find ways to be useful and relevant.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's been interesting to see as a newcomer to NAATBatt, just the kind of network that NAATBatt has is typically like the leaders of the industry, right? And then Volta Foundation, I've been a member of that since my early career, going to Battery Brunch, which is now Battery Forum. And so that attracts kind of a different audience of learners. And so definitely the interplay between the two is what's needed to bring so much more value to this industry, especially with the demands in the workforce, with the different technical challenges, building up supply chains, like you mentioned, international collaboration. There's so much to be done, but having these different strengths of the organizations working together in the right way is fantastic. So yeah, it's very awesome to see these industry leaders coming together and seeing how we can support the industry as we're moving forward.
Yes, and what NAATBatt is seen as with this, basic. Scratch that. We're gonna. I wanted to add a little bit of a vignette that we might be able to kind of edit in here.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I see that I'm very proud of the NAATBatt membership for is, NAATBatt is very engaged, along with NAATBatt, with the U.S. Department of Energy. There's lobbying firms, and I've worked with them in my past in my career. But NAATBatt being this neutral platform, being a nonprofit, being a source of truth for the industry, is really beneficial because, we started with working with the team at Engle a few years ago to put together the supply chain database. And that proved to be very useful and a good start in a conversation. But over time, a lot of these relationships have evolved and grown. The LiBridge Initiative created a report that basically established some of the things that are hopefully going to help guide policy moving forward to grow the industry. So when I look at things like how NAATBatt gets involved with the externalities, the other battery associations, regional governments, basically across the globe, and these organizations like DOE, what I find is amazing is that you can bring this group of people together. They are willing to expend a lot of their personal energy and time to help the industry move forward and to identify some of the big issues and to work to help solve those big issues together. Whether it's investment challenges, whether it's scaling, whether it's localization of supply chains, all of these issues, there's somebody in the industry who's willing to step up and take their time to help educate and inform policymakers of the real world of what's going on in the industry in a very truthful fashion that is much less biased than you typically see in any type of industry-government relationship. And I'm really proud of the fact that NAATBatt has been involved in that LiBridge initiative and continues to remain so. And that has led to a lot of really good, positive things for both, I think, the industry and for policy, because by being able to craft policy with an understanding of where the choke points are, where the big issues are, is much more precision policy than, let's say, blunt force trauma policy of making things happen. So you can use a sledgehammer or a scalpel, and I'd like to think NAATBatt is helping a lot of these government entities work with a much higher level of precision of where to put the emphasis, where to put the support, to make sure the industry can grow at a reasonable rate, that we can meet the needs for the application spaces, that we can overcome the technical and commercial obstacles, and that it can achieve a critical mass to be successful.
Yeah, yeah. And we're ending the conversation, so I wanted to ask some fun questions about, what do you do when you're not working on batteries?
Well, right now I'm spending a lot of time working on batteries, whether it's the working as the Chief Safety Officer for NAATBatt, or the current Chairman of NAATBatt, or the Chair of the SAE Battery Standards Steering Committee. That's chewing up a lot of my time, but I will say, as a car guy, I have a couple of projects in the garage that I use to, when I definitely have had enough and need to get away. So one particular car in the garage is my wife's 1965 Mustang convertible, and so that is a project of love for me. It's let's just say it's a survivor car, and it needs a lot of tender loving care at its age, as we all do as we get older. But that's fun to work on, and I have a 1966 Thunderbird that is a much deeper project car that is requiring a lot of detail work. And so when I really need to get away from all of the battery world, I retreat to my old combustion world and work on a very primitive carbureted combustion engine, recognizing how inferior it is to today's technology. But still, the interesting thing about working on projects like that is physics is physics, and engineering and physics are tools that solve a lot of different problems. And whether it's in that environment or in the battery space, it's amazing what learning and that lifelong learning does to be very informative of any problem solving. And let's just say I'm much less shy about solving electrical problems now than I ever was before, based on my experience with batteries. So yes, so in my spare time I work on very primitive 12-volt combustion engine systems, and try and keep those maintained. But I will also say that in the driveway is a Model Y that is our daily driver that has required absolutely zero maintenance since the day we bought it. And I recognize that there is a not so subtle difference between those technologies.
Not so subtle. That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know you worked on classic cars.
Yep.
Yeah. And tell me more about your dogs.
Dogs. Ugh. I don't know that I want to include any of that in the NAATBatt. So yes, so we have dogs. We have poodles. We have two standards and a teacup poodle, and they keep us busy as well.
What are their names?
So we are bit Disney fans. So we have Maui, Nala, and Lady, all named after Disney characters.
Oh, that's so cute. I love that. Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd want to share to?
I talked a lot. You guys
You did
hell of a
amazing.
time
This was
editing that down to
incredible.
something manageable. I don't envy your task.
You don't have it. I like it because I get to hear the stories and like what you guys are up to. So
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Brian.
Not a problem. Well, I will say, kind of the emphasis from me being at my stage in my career, and I'll kind of use this. So there's a few legends in the industry. One is Sandy Munro. Everybody in the automotive industry knows Sandy for his teardowns and his very frank review of the what is good and what is bad about construction of automobiles. I know Sandy from we've had him involved in some SAE events, and John McElroy, who has been with Autoline for many years and known, especially in Detroit, as a legend in reporting on the auto industry. And obviously, Mr. McElroy and his team have really had to transition as the center of the universe moved out of Detroit and much further west. And so, now to hear them reporting on a lot of the Chinese automakers is very interesting, because, the tech is moving very quickly there, and it's a hyper competitive market. And what they're introducing to the world and to the consumer, there's some really amazing work that's going on there. But when I hear them talk, they are excited about where the industry's headed. And I will use a Sandy Munro quote from World Congress from last year. He looked at me and he said, "Sometimes I wish I was about 15 years younger, because I'd really like to see where this is going." And I really do think that those who have been in the industry a while, and where we were basically doing a lot of evolutionary technology development, we thought it was revolutionary, but it was just incremental steps on a very mature baseline. We were standing on the shoulders of people who were standing on the shoulders of others who developed things like the Otto cycle, and combustion engine technology. While there was always some new whiz-bang thing that we were talking about, it was pretty mature, and there wasn't a whole lot more we were going to be able to eke out of it with the infrastructure, the designs, and the technology we were working with. But to see what we have now, we have cars that can look very pedestrian, and actually they look really nice. So point being is, we can have a family sedan that, if you were to put it on the line against a 1980 supercar, it would beat it in the quarter mile. It would beat it in 0 to 60. And the performance that these vehicles are delivering is amazing. And the fact that, that basically having this much electrical energy storage is enabling other technologies. If we look at combustion engine vehicles, the alternators get bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of how much electrical energy they have to now manage to power things like ADAS and all the driver information system, all the screens that are in your SUV, and the HVAC, both front and rear in that big SUV. So, even combustion engines are being heavily electrified. And what we're finding is that having that big battery pack and the benefit of an 800-volt system that could be charged in, to 80% in 15 minutes is huge, because now we can do some pretty exotic things with LiDAR that we never would have thought about 15 years ago. And so now we're looking, very seriously at, self-driving cars. I heard something very interesting just yesterday, and that is Uber. The value of Uber exceeds many of the market values of many of the automakers today, because investors now see that there is true potential in vehicles being this asset that is highly durable, has a potential of lasting not 5 or 7 years, but 20 years, and being available to anybody to use at any time. And this gets very interesting, because we're seeing less and less people get driver's license. The cost of owning a vehicle has risen. But the fact that now we've enabled this technology through having these large energy storage systems is really exciting. And the fact that these large energy storage systems can also act as virtual BESS systems, where they can help level load a grid in a region, and the consumer actually gets some money back for having their vehicle attached to the grid. Those are the things that, as we kind of see the industry evolving, become, to me, a really good reason to not only get involved in the industry, but realize that if you're in this industry, you will continue to learn and your career will continue to evolve over decades, not just years, but decades. So it is pretty exciting to be part of all of this, and NAATBatt really is, I think, a nexus of all of these different pieces of the infrastructure coming together, and as it's evolving, to be part of this massive transition for what I think is the next 100 years of evolution for the human race. So it is, I think, very exciting to be part of NAATBatt. It's very exciting to be involved with many of the creative and talented, and I would say people who are willing to share their knowledge and experience very openly. So, you know, I think to close out, I'll repeat it one more time. You know, in this industry today, every day is a school day. We're all learning, and that makes it a very exciting place to be. And you can't learn in a vacuum. You need a network of people to teach you, and you need to be humble enough to understand that there's a lot to learn, and nobody can know everything.
Very well said. And thank you so much, Brian, for your time. I'm sure you have to run off to another meeting or something, but thank you. I think you are a wealth of knowledge and information, and this is such a value for NAATBatt to have. So really appreciate it again. Thank you. And we'll be in touch when it's going to be posted. We'll probably just get clips of it.
Yeah,
So
please keep it brief.